Elevate Performance Coaching, Arthur Tong.
Thank you very much, Mike.
Good to have you. We've caught up recently in recent times, and you've actually become a customer of ours.
I have.
But we got talking on the subject of recovery in all its aspects and things that we've interacted with or researched and tried to understand where everything fits in place. So I guess today, for your audience, for your team, we want to have a chat about recovery.
Let's do that.
Alrighty. So a little bit about my background for those that may not know me. This is my 55th year of bike riding. So that's a long time. So I've ridden road, velodrome, specialist time trial. And then when I moved to Singapore 21 years ago, I got involved with triathlon and was involved in running a club for about 9 years, a club called Tri-Edge. And we've been running recovery systems for around 5 years now. So our main objective was to really, for this audience, was to really make the lot of all the athletes that have a passion for exercise at whatever level to balance the books and the energy requirements in their life across everything from work to family to key relationships. And you've got a new baby at home. There's a whole lot of demands on us, and then to have enough in reserve to actually be passionate about doing your training and recovering from everything at the same time. So well, let's kick off with a little bit of a Q&A back and forward.
Yeah, let's do that.
All righty. Well, defining recovery.
I think for me, recovery is a trinity, right? Athletes, we train and we need to recover. So from a lifestyle standpoint, what does this athlete do, right? Is this athlete flying all over the place? Really busy? Is this athlete training a lot? Is it training very intensely? What kind of goals this athlete has, right? All accumulates down to how much recovery this athlete's going to need. And then as a coach, when I come in from a training plan perspective, how do I integrate some sort of work and rest cycle into the training plan that fits uniquely for this athlete?
Yeah. And
then obviously the third part of that trinity is the modalities. And I think where recovery system comes in is where the boots comes in, which I've been using it for a while. How does that enhance get all this marginal gains for the athlete?
Right.
That's a 3-part thing.
That's perfect and perfect summary. And training makes you worse.
Definitely, it is a stress.
It is a stress. And by the way, it's a dose. We sometimes refer to training as a dose. And what makes poison is the dose.
It is, eh?
And if the recovery dose or solution doesn't match the dose of training, then there's a gap, and your body's not able to catch up and compensate, because recovery. Training makes you worse, recovery makes you better. That's when the gains lock in.
Absolutely.
And,
I think for me as a coach, it's always about balancing how much of that dose and then a period of recovery so that the athlete can take on the next dose.
Yeah.
Right. And your specialization is coming in to enhance that with the products as well.
That's quite right. So I noticed when it comes to recovery, some people have the idea that recovery is a once a week thing. So recovery is actually daily. So the two major aspects of recovery are actually sleep and nutrition.
Yeah.
They're the foundations. And I don't want to go into nutrition. That's like a deep dive it's a big topic. But suffice to say, sleep quality, the right balance of the number of hours, the number of REM, the number of hours of deep sleep, and keeping the light sleep percentage to an acceptable amount. That's highly important for locking in improvements and gains, because that's when your brain is recovering. That's when the muscles and all the soft tissue and all the muscular and nervous system recovery is happening as well. and nutrition and the timing of nutrition and the right macros go hand in hand with that. That's a very complicated topic, nutrition, my word.
It is.
So that the other two foundations are then looking at recovery modalities. And recovery modalities will actually add or subtract to those two fundamental aspects. So maybe first of all, let's discuss sleep.
That's a topic that is very close to heart right now because I will have a crying baby at night.
How's it going?
So far, so good.
Yeah.
But you can definitely feel the effects when your sleep isn't of the same quality as before.
Yeah.
Your day and your training don't necessarily, you don't get that quality of training because of that disturbed sleep.
Yeah. So I want to throw something out there. Yeah. Life stress is body stress. Yeah. So if you're under the pump with work or relationships or home life with a new baby, for example, these are all adjustments that a body has to accommodate. And that is the same type of stress on your body as it does impact your body and your training stress. So one tip that I do for myself, if I'm really under the pump, I may actually delay because I'm still training, mostly for my own enjoyment, my own sadistic pleasure. But it's around 16 hours a week, which is not a small amount.
It's not small at all.
Particularly for a 62-year-old.
I know.
But anyway, so I will sometimes, one of the tricks I have is I will sometimes delay my training by 4 hours or 8 hours. So if I wake up in the morning and I'm completely knackered, and even after a cup of coffee, I'm not there. Even after putting my boots on while I'm drinking my coffee, which is a morning warm-up ritual for me, and I'm not there, I will delay my training. Quite often that 4 or 8 hours is enough for your body to catch up. So I call it a +4, +8 in my own language. And sometimes it's a good idea just to skip your training day and say to Arthur, it wasn't happening today, Arthur. And, we all have those days. And so I think that's important to read the signs and to accommodate based on your life stress. The other comment I'd like to make is about alarm clocks. We're all time poor.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Right, which is really why we did the recovery business, to help people that are time poor. But more about that later. Your hormone levels are highest just before you wake, just before you naturally wake.
Oh, okay.
So now this is your growth hormones, your growth spurt, and so on. And if 7 days a week we're prematurely waking ourselves with an alarm clock because we need to get 2 hours or an hour and a half in before work, that may not be the best thing for us. So sometimes letting your body naturally wake is a way in which you can get the right dose of what you need from a hormonal perspective to actually do the growth properly. Now, so in an ideal world, we'd be able to sleep until we woke naturally. Of course, sometimes
that's not going to happen.
Several times a week, we're going to have an early alarm. If you're doing an RTI in Singapore around the islands ride, then you're going to have to be on the road by 6 a.m. maybe earlier. And so you're going to have an alarm. But so one thing, as I've gotten older and as my observations and my reading and experience, I try not to overdo the alarm thing. So it's once or twice a week for me at my level. So sleep and nutrition, couple of tricks. Dark room for sleeping. Right. If it's not soundproof, this is where the baby and mothers, by the way, or parents will naturally have one ear. That's for sure. Out for the baby.
Yeah. Michael, I have a question.
Yeah.
When you wake up in the morning, how do you measure that scale of fatigue? Is your body ready to go? Do you do some sort of HRV tests, or do you just ask yourself, from a scale of 1 to 10, how tired you feel. Is today the best time to execute this next training session? What is some of your measures?
I think devices play a real role. So I know your Garmin measures those sorts of metrics, and that's really good. So I use a device, and mostly so I'm looking for sleep numbers, sleep quality. But I think ultimately as athletes, the ultimate expression of understanding our bodies is perceived, is our own perceived effort or our own exercise IQ of how your readiness to train. Because I've had devices tell me that my training session was rubbish when I've done 4 by 5 minutes at my VO2. And I've hit my best numbers for a long time. So sometimes the device is a bit off sometimes, but so I think your own personal perception of that. Speaking personally, it may take me 10 to 15 minutes before I have that number, because most of us sleep in aircon, so our bodies are naturally a bit dehydrated when we wake. I also sleep. I have an earthing mat underneath my bed sheet, and in fact, I have one underneath my keyboard here, and also underneath my desk. So we've got a lot of EMF, and without wanting to be too nutty about it all, I did this as an experiment, see if it would make a difference, because it's a relatively inexpensive experiment, and it did. It gave me some extra gains around my sleep quality. So that really helped me to bounce back a bit sooner. But I think to your point, a lot of people love metrics, and they're a good guideline, and you as the good coach that you are will be looking at those numbers
because
as well.
It's a very objective view of what's really happening.
I know how you're wired. You're as an engineer, I know you're looking at those numbers, and that's really good. I think that gives everyone a common scale and a common benchmark to measure things.
But it's always key to kind of merge that subjective and that objective view to it.
Exactly. So let's so the other thing is the other simple thing that you may want to do is wear an eye mask, and just to black out the light. Now I'm not affiliated with any eye mask companies, but I use one called Mantra. It's really good at blocking the light out. Okay. It's quite heavy though. Now I've got used to it. Now I also put a few drops of lavender around the nose, so that has a nice calming effect as well. And
that's true.
So those sorts of things have made a difference, because my wife's a night owl. I'm an early morning person. So sometimes she will still be doing things at night. She may be listening to a movie with her headphones on, because that's her me time. And so being able to block the light out is really important. So those little things have worked for me. There are other things around. There's a chili pad, a company called Chili Pad, and there's others like this, where it's a layer that goes over the top of a mattress. Okay. It's kind of like a very thin waterbed, and it has a control unit, which is basically a small refrigerator about the size of, about this squared, and it's pumping cool water into that layer to bring your core temperature down. Right. Okay. That's interesting. So for some people, so I don't know if you've noticed, have you ever woken up and your feet are sticking out of the blankets? Yeah. So that just happened this morning. This is quite common. It happens to me as well. So this is your body regulating your temperature. Oh, okay. And so in order to do that, you imagine you've been a little restless to do that, right? It's a subconscious act, but you're in light sleep mode when that's going on. So for some people are really hot when they sleep, and it's difficult to get the sleep quality that they need. So that cooling mat could be a possibly help for some people as well. They range in price from about $800 to $1,400.
So when you regulate your body's temperature when you sleep, it improves the quality of the sleep.
Sleep quality, yep. And your REM and your deep sleep will improve, as well as the light sleep percentage will drop to an acceptable level. So a couple of tips around sleep. Some of them are really inexpensive. like the earthing mat, perhaps the eye mask, and earplugs. But you wouldn't be allowed to wear earplugs, right? You get into trouble, I think, at home.
Probably.
Anyway, but I heard from you that baby is sleeping quite well.
Baby is sleeping well, actually. So we are getting her into a pretty good routine. So she'll wake up maybe twice during the night for her feed. But beyond that, she is quite a good sleeper. So that has also definitely improved our quality of sleep.
Nice.
Yeah, so that definitely helps. And we can see the difference when we wake up feeling a little bit more refreshed rather than walking around like zombies.
Yeah. That's awesome. Awesome to hear. So you're doing some nighttime swims, right? I know you do some morning swims.
I do mainly morning swims.
Okay.
Evening will be track. So we do some quite high intensity runs in the evenings, and that definitely, is quite a bit of stimulus.
Absolutely.
Right before bedtime.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you've picked up a really good point there. Yeah. In my coaching days, we used to notice our athletes but having issues with getting to sleep after a swim in the evening.
Hard swim.
Yeah, a hard swim where we say swimming from 7 to 9 and their core temperature is still quite high and people get dehydrated in the pool anyway, right? Even though we've got bottles and we're reminding them to drink, there's still a bit of dehydration. Same with track. So a recovery tip that I'd like to comment on, and by the way, a lot of this is not recovery system stuff. These are learnings, and hopefully that some of this is helpful as well. Absolutely. So but one idea is to have a cooling vest. So a vest is a company called, the name will come to me in a minute. There's quite a few out there, by the way, but I'll just park that. I'll remember if I don't focus on it. I'll remember. The way the cooling vest works is it's front and back, it's chest and back, and it has gel pads, or there's more modern material now which are carbon-based cooling, which actually draws the temperature, still cold, but it draws the heat out of your body.
Right.
And the way this works is by dropping your core temperature, you're getting a little readiness for rest and sleep. So that if in the absence of that, a cold shower, which is actually very difficult to do in Singapore, even if you've got the water on really cold, it's still probably 20 degrees or something.
Talking about the cold, what is your philosophy in cold treatment, hot treatment, ice treatment, and all? We're using changing the body's temperature to stimulate some certain things in the body. Like what's your approach to it? Okay, so
ice is a really interesting one. I'll summarize by saying fundamentally ice is for trauma.
So swelling and stuff.
You've twisted your ankle, you've sprained your knee, you've got a hamstring injury.
Acute injury onto it.
So ice is quite important at that point. It's doing two main things. It's controlling internal bleeding, and it's a form of pain relief. So just know that ice is delaying healing. So it's good for trauma because you've got a lot going on at that point. But why we don't use ice day to day for recovery is that it does delay healing, because first phase of healing is inflammation. So inflammation is your body's signal to release the growth and repair hormones. Right. So so icing or doing an ice bath after a hard session, unless there's trauma, you may actually be nullifying some of the benefits because you're not allowing the natural process to happen. Now, I will hashtag and add a bookmark to that. So we work with rugby, for example. Now, rugby's a
high impact.
High impact. We supply Rugby World Cup, New Zealand Rugby, Singapore Rugby, and particularly here in the heat, the sevens tournaments where they're playing 3 times a day, the guys will go and jump in we call them wheelie bins of ice, the big rubbish bins full of ice. They'll go and do that for about a minute or so to bring their core temperature down. But of course, they've got collision injuries as well, given the nature of rugby being a collision sport. So that's highly appropriate. But then they'll come and do the compression after that. So that treatment is short enough to be beneficial, and of course, but not long enough to actually interfere with the body's renewal process. Triathletes, ice. So we know the protocols, right? We need to control our heat. Yep. And does anyone remember what a race looks like?
Blistering heat. By the time you get on the run course, it's already in the afternoon.
It's been too long since we've had a race, hasn't it? Yeah, it's terrible. In fact, a shout out to all our athletes in New Zealand racing Ironman. Ironman New Zealand tomorrow on Saturday. So we've got
on the day of our recording. Yeah, that's tomorrow.
Yeah, we've got lots of our athletes racing. So yeah, so that's good. So now ice and the protocol for keeping core temperature down.
Yeah.
So on the heart, as you know, the head.
Yeah.
Anywhere else?
The pits.
Yes, armpits and the groin. Ice down the pants. Sounds odd, but it works. So I come from New Zealand, and if somebody falls overboard in the southern waters, which are wintertime would be 10 degrees, summertime might be 11 or 12, you've got about 20 minutes to survive. You'll only survive 20 minutes, right. Particularly if it's windy, because you've got the wind chill as well. Yeah. So the protocol there is you put your hands under your armpits and you cross your legs, and this is assuming you've got a life jacket on. So you cover up the bits where you're going to lose heat, and hopefully you're wearing a hat. The opposite applies in the tropics. We want ice on those areas to bring our core temperature down, and that can be quite important for keeping your heart rate under control.
Yeah,
because there's because we race in the humidity, because your body cools through evaporation. So here you notice there's no evaporation. The sweat sits on you, and there's no cooling effect through evaporation. So your heart just has to pump faster in order to get the blood circulating to try and dissipate the heat.
Yeah.
Funny thing was, we've all raced in Australia and other countries with lower humidity.
Yeah.
I remember I did Ironman WA a few years back. Race day, it was 37. It felt like, for somebody who's trained a lot in Singapore, it felt like about 28 because there's evaporation.
Yeah, that's
the dew point or the evaporation point's a lot lower. So controlling your temperature is very important. So the other thing you touched on, Arthur, is hot and cold therapy.
Yeah, that's right. How do you do it?
I'm a big believer in this. So hot and cold therapy, it would be something of the nature of doing a plunge pool. So a plunge pool at about 10 degrees. So it doesn't have to be ice, roughly 8 to 10 degrees. There may be a minute in there, and good luck if you can last longer than a minute. Yeah. Then straight into a spa pool, and then maybe a sauna, and then back to the plunge pool. So doing a rotation of those is going to help with getting rid of metabolic waste.
Is it because it's helping you squeeze the blood kind of in and out from the vessels?
Yes.
So it stops blood pooling and stuff. Is that the logic?
Contracting, then expanding
the muscles, so that the veins are pushing the bloods in and out.
Yeah. So at a cellular level, it's encouraging at a cellular level your body to let go of the bad stuff. Right. So this actually promotes autophagy. So autophagy meaning your body's release of dead cells, and that's important to make room for new growth. So you may be doing all the right things, but if you've got a traffic jam of dead cells, then it may not work so well. So that is a good form of autophagy. So that's hot and cold treatment. Saunas are also really good for that. And a treatment of, say, 3 by 10 minutes at 90 degrees Celsius is a good protocol. Same sort of thing. These things work best fasted, by the way, because your body's a little more receptive to that process. Right. So the things we've just talked about are really cool to do, but I wouldn't say that they're actually convenient.
That's for sure.
So I want to get on to convenience, because what is convenient and repeatable will get done. What gets done will make a difference. So that's quite an important concept, because we could talk about cryotherapy, we could talk about red light saunas, and so on. But quite often these modalities, you've got to go somewhere.
Because massage.
Yep. So massage. Let's start off by talking about range of motion recovery modalities. So I'm going to talk in this category. I'm going to talk about hands-on massage, foam rolling, and percussion guns. Does that sound good?
Sounds good.
Anything else?
No.
These three things.
It's always a good lesson from here.
All right. So I want to talk about, let's talk about hands-on massage. I think a good sports masseuse is worth their weight in gold, particularly a masseuse that is really intuitive about finding blockages, finding shortening, because we're in sports that promote shortening of muscles. So running's the same movement pattern, cycling's the same movement pattern, swimming's the same movement pattern. Even though across the three sports we're getting a good overall workout, within each of those the movement patterns are locking the muscles into certain patterns, and that'll be based on our own biomechanics and strengths and weaknesses and so on and so forth. So a good sports masseuse is worth their weight in gold to unlock, to break down scar tissue, and to allow the muscles to lengthen out and return to their original optimal range of motion. You're likely to be worse before you're better.
That's for sure.
So I personally, I would never, and when I was coaching, I would always prescribe a massage in a recovery week or far away from any key event, because you're going to be worse before you're better. You're creating tissue damage. It's like taking a step back in order to take two steps forward. So initially there's that overhead. So there's a frequency to that sports massage that would be appropriate, maybe once or twice a month, for example, depending on your load. So the second thing I'd like to talk about is a simple thing, foam rolling. And similar to a sports masseuse, not quite, in my view, not quite as effective, but it's a modality that we should be doing. Lengthen before strengthen, though, I think is a common thing. Personally, I think I own every massage roller known to man, and I look at them as they sit in the cupboard, and I seldom use them, but I know it's the sort of thing that I should use. What are your thoughts on?
Well, they always say that the foam roller is the poor man's massage, right? When you can't pay for the masseuse, you go do it you go visit the foam roller.
And of course, then we naturally avoid the areas that need foam rolling the most, because they're the most painful. So I think that's quite common amongst a lot of people I talk to. But I do see that as a good modality, and it's that lengthening modality. Same with percussion guns. So percussion guns are breaking down scar tissue around the insertion points and across the length of the muscle to allow them to lengthen out. It's probably not, in my view, not as brutal, my experience personally, not as brutal as a sports massage, but it can do quite a bit of disturbance. And so there's an appropriate time to do that. You're probably not going to do it on trauma legs. So you've just gone out and run 2 loops of McRitchie. You probably would be best not doing it at that point, because your tissue is already in trauma, and that may not be the best time. When things have calmed down, when things have recovered, then it becomes a different process to try and return the range of motion. So I do see those modalities as being useful. In fact, the Terra gun people here in Singapore, we did a product swap. So they've got our product, we've got theirs, because they were really interested in reselling our product. So I use the gun. Being mostly a cyclist, I've got poor posture and all those sort of things. So I use it between the shoulders. Really,
where the boots can't go.
Where the boots can't go. Yeah, exactly. So really quite effective. So there's a frequency to that. That might be whereas massage is once or twice a month. For example, the compression gun might be once or twice a week. and that could be an appropriate frequency.
Michael, can you tell us a little bit more about the difference between the percussion guns and the boots? Because I clearly have both products.
Yes.
When I use the percussion guns, I feel like I'm releasing that knots or that tightness in the muscles.
Yeah.
Whereas with the boots, I feel more of like an increased blood flow and a little bit more of like that flushing out of that lactic acid. Like, would I be right?
Yep. Yeah. So let's talk about the boots and the 4 reasons why you would use the boots, and also the frequency of use. The category of treatments called intermittent, meaning off and on, pneumatic, meaning air, compression.
Yeah.
And it's been around for 30 plus years in the medical front.
Right. So it's not entirely a new.
Yeah, I wish I invented it, but I can't say that we have. But we've actually invented some functionality around our product that we thought would be useful for a lot of folks. So we have 3 different markets. One is medical. So yesterday I was at Mount E Hospital doing some patient visits with the surgeon, one of our surgeons, and that's to treat conditions like diabetes, lymphedema, DVT, pre-DVT. And so it's a proven and tested modality for treating edema. Edema means swelling, by the way.
Yeah.
And so in the case of medical, the folks are experiencing swelling because of a medical condition.
Yeah.
In the case of athletes, swelling is what happens when we train. It's our body's first phase of healing, is to create edema. And edema is to capture the metabolic waste, and then it'll deal with it in its own sweet time under a natural process of the blood moving around the body. So intermittent compression speeds that process up. So Arthur, you're a lot younger than me, but still very wise. But I've noticed as I've gotten older, my recovery time is slower. So welcome to getting old. This could be future you speaking here. Future you saying, well, in actual fact, even though I like to think I'm still 25 years old, my training week's more like 9 days instead of 7, because I do need more time naturally. But let me come back to the 4 ways in which the boots can help you. First of all, as a warm-up. So 10 minutes on the boots will boost your muscle oxygen to the same point that will take you 30 to 40 minutes of running or cycling. So that's a really good warm-up hack for people that are time poor.
How about the joints? So how does it work when you slip on the boots as a warm-up sequence, right? You're increasing the blood flow, you're increasing overall body heat. Every time I use the boots, I realize that my core body temperature does go up quite a bit, even though I'm sitting in an air-conditioned room.
Yes.
But does it help warm up the joints? Does it answer the joints?
So around the treated joints, like your knees and ankles and so on, it's really pushing the blood at high volume into soft tissue areas, which is really good for soft tissue health. However, it's not doing the dynamic joint mobilization.
That's right.
So you're not going to wear the boots and then take them off immediately and then go and run 100 meters flat out. You do need to mobilize the joints. It's very important to understand, but you've just shortened that whole process down. So when I look at your social media, I look at all the great speed and agility drills that you're doing at Badoke and so on. I see that you're all doing the movement patterns and so on. So what the boots are doing is getting your vascular system at a point that's now ready to do the joint mobilization. Right. So use case for this is athlete comes home from work and they've got a 1-hour trainer session. To do a proper warm-up so you can hit the high notes of the session, it might take you 30 to 40 minutes. So you don't have that time. So you can shorten that by having 10 minutes on the boots before. It could be, and then do your session, then do another recovery session on the boots later. So that's the warm-up aspect. If you have a look at our social media and our website, we've actually got some graphs on that. In fact, I'll little bit of post-editing. So that's warm-up. The second is recovery. So using the boots for 20 to 30 minutes. And by the way, there's no tissue damage. Remember some of the other modalities, we talked about their benefits and their downside being there may be some short-term tissue damage because they're doing the job of extending, breaking down scar tissue and extending the range of motion. With intermittent compression, there's no tissue damage. So it's something you can do multiple times of the day. You could be working from home on a conference call doing your recovery seated, using the legs. But if folks asked us, if I only have time to use it once a day, when would the best time be?
That's a good question.
Yeah, the best time would be before bed. And the reason why, the major difference between us and other modalities, intermittent compression and other modalities, is that it triggers the parasympathetic healing system. So this is your body going into rest and digest. This is the nervous system turning on the healing process, which will then release the growth hormones and so on. So the easy evidence of this is that when people get on the boots,
They fall asleep.
yes. Did you notice that at home?
I do.
Yeah.
I do. Yeah. But I need to, maybe after 30 minutes.
Yes.
When I put way more than 30 minutes, I start to get a little bit dozy.
Highly active brain. Highly active brain, you see. And brain going 100 miles an hour. So
Maybe that's because I'm still watching television.
It may well be. So that's why we say warm up 10 minutes, because the initial big ramp of the muscle oxygen boost, this is SMO, by the way, not SPO. This is measuring muscle oxygen activity, is in the first 10 minutes. Then it's incremental beyond that. And so we find that post-race, say a Spartan event or an Ironman event or so on, when people come into the recovery tent, that they're dead keen to talk, hey, Arthur, how did your race go? Oh, what do you think of that hill? And, all these sorts of things. Wasn't it hot on the run? 5 minutes later, they're out like a light, they're fast asleep. So it does have a real benefit to sleep. Now, remember back to what we said, first of all, the two major primary foundations for recovery are sleep and nutrition. So anything that influences either of those is gold. Okay, so third modality, rehab. Occasionally, things will go wrong.
That's for sure.
So as I like to say, as paraphrase Mike Tyson, everyone has a plan until an injury punches them in the face.
Right.
So I've been punched in the face twice with a hip replacement and spinal surgery,
Wow.
which was couple of big ones to recover from. Lesson learned from my point of view of not recovering, of overtraining, not recovering properly, and ignoring the signs. Anyway, there's just a personal disaster for me, but some real learnings in that we wanted to bring to bear in our business as recovery systems. So here is my hack for a sprained, let's call it a strained knee or a hamstring. We talked about ice being useful for trauma earlier. So you can put an ice pack, like a gel pack, inside the boot. Better to wrap it in a towel, because the TPU plastic will actually create a burning effect, by the way, on your skin. So better to have a surface in between, and then put it on the area that's inflamed or injured. Then zip the cuffs up, and we're assuming there's no broken wounds here. Zip the cuffs up and then have the pressure down nice and low, maybe 20% of what you would normally have it. Now you've got the magic of ice for pain relief and the internal bleeding, compression to relieve the swelling, ICT, ice compression therapy. So that's what that then becomes. So hopefully this is a modality that you don't need to use very often, because we want to stay clear of that. So the fourth mode, so we've talked about warm-up, recovery, rehab. The fourth one is travel.
Travel. Okay.
Travel, yes. Does anyone remember travel? We're all looking forward to...
What's a plane?
We're all looking forward to going and doing a key race somewhere. Now, when was your last key race?
Wow, maybe 2019 over in the Philippines.
Philippines. Okay,
Yeah.
so how long was the flight?
I reckon about 5 hours with a transit.
Yep.
Yeah.
So is air travel fatiguing or not?
Oh, absolutely. It's dehydrating. You know, you're stuck in the seat. You can't really move.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. So athletes, you've trained 6-9 months for this key race. You've done everything within your power. You followed Coach Arthur's plan. He's really happy with your progress. All your training peak numbers just looking brilliant. And then you step on a plane 4 days out from a race, maybe 3 days if it's the Philippines. You step on the plane, they close the cabin door, and the SPO, the oxygen levels, drop from 99% to 94%. Have you ever noticed that people fall asleep when the cabin door closes? Quite often? That's why. So now your body is producing edema. And now you're going to turn up, swelling, edema is swelling. Now you're going to turn up on race day. You've done 9 months of perfect training, and you're turning up in a compromised position for race day. So the travel aspect of the boots is you can use them on the plane. It's going to help treat the edema and stay on top of it to make sure that come race day, you're ready to go.
So that's why on airplanes they will give you a little bit of like a compression socks, but it doesn't really do anything, does it?
Okay, so compression socks. I'll quote the head vascular surgeon at Changi General Hospital just down the road from where we are here in Simei. You're not going to get any worse, but you're not going to get much better either.
Okay.
So reason, compression socks are static and they're around 20 mmHg of pressure. You
need muscle movement in order for the socks to work, right?
Because if you're moving, there's a milking action. So it's doing, the compression boots do that milking action themselves, and also 10 times the pressure of the sock. So unless you're moving, there's no milking action.
So the socks
one dimensional. So I would say athletes that absolutely depend mentally on compression socks for racing, please use them. You know, if you believe they work, hats off to you. And I think that might be part of your race ritual, but just know they have a limited effectiveness, and they do require movement, and it's still only, actually it's 20 mmHg of pressure at the ankle.
20 mmHg.
That's units of mercury, which measures pressure. You may see this blood pressure, whereas the boots are operating at up to 240 mmHg, and they're moving the blood volume. We've got different methods. We've got 4 methods, actually, 4 different treatment modalities that we talk about in our FAQ. We're very fortunate in that our FAQ on our website was written by our athletes from different sports, because we're across rugby, mixed martial arts, triathlon, ultra running, cycling, mountain biking, multi-sport, motocross. With the world motocross champion, dual champion this year and last year is a customer of ours. 2 Olympic gold medalists from Singapore. So you'll know one of them. He's a swimmer. You may not know the other one. She's an archer, and her name is Nur Alam. She is the Paralympian Olympic gold medalist at Rio. And a bunch of the NSAs here. So football, some of the basketball players have bought individually. A lot of triathletes from lots of clubs as well. So and then running, cycling, and so on. The cyclists are very secretive fellows. Like we're in the Matadors and the Mavericks, 2 very highly competitive clubs. They will never post on their social media that they're using the boots. Never. And yet I know they are, because when we see them at races, they will take us aside privately and say, best thing I ever bought. But they're not going to tell anyone. They're not. So I find that very annoying. But anyway, so our FAQ on use, how to use, on modalities has been mostly written by our athletes, which is really cool. Really like that.
Okay.
Yeah. Hey, how can your guys get in touch with us?
I know. How can we get in touch with you?
Well, look, we would love to run a demo day for you guys, but that may be a little difficult to organize, because that track, you're all going to be hot and sweaty, and you probably want to get home straight after. So don't worry. So we're not far away from your track at Bedok. We are in Sime, and we will, Arthur and I will look for an opportunity to organize a demo day. But meantime, you can drop in. Let's say you've done your big training session on a Saturday morning. How about booking with us on a Saturday afternoon, and coming just behind me, we have a nice office with a sofa behind me. Can't really see it very well. We've got all our equipment here, and all our cuffs. So we have legs, arms, hip and glute cuff, pants. Come and try. Come and do some recovery with us and experience for yourself. So there's one thing. We would love to meet you, and we would love to hear about your training and your passion for your sport. The other way you can try is you can rent for a month, and depending on the product, it's $299 for a month, and it's the sort of thing you'll be using every day. So compared to, say, a massage, which we know is different, but let's compare it to the cost of a massage. There's a pretty good ROI if you're using it every day or multiple times a week.
What if an athlete tries it and go like, oh, I want to keep the product? How does that work?
So if you've rented it, then we will deduct the rental off the price.
Right. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we it's all about accessibility. We want you to try it, and we want you to we want you to experience for yourself that, hey, this is great, and
not because I said so.
Yeah, don't take our word for it. But you'll notice on our Instagram, which is Recovery Systems, lots of our athletes post more or less every day about their recovery sessions, and we're not paying them to post or anything. They're just really passionate about how beneficial they are. So a lot of our guys are using it 10 minutes in the morning for a warm-up. So personally, that's my coffee time before I go out and do my morning session on the bike. And then if you're doing work from home, it's a little more convenient in that you might be able to use it on calls. Yeah. And then before bed is really beneficial, because it'll help you sleep.
I think that's one thing I realized, is that the product is quiet. It's quiet. It's not like the gun that is really loud. It's almost numbing to your ears.
Yes.
The pump is generally quite quiet. I think that's one key.
Yeah.
Key good thing about it.
And nobody fell asleep using a percussion gun.
That's true.
But it is a different modality. So let's say there is a benefit there. So I'm not saying, but please, it does have its place in its frequency.
Yeah.
But the boots will put you into a restful mode and start triggering that parasympathetic system, or the rest and digest, where your body's releasing all the right hormones for the growth, repair, and ultimately we're looking for gains.
Rest and digest.
Yeah. So this is highly important, because you need to balance your energy across everything in your life. Nobody likes it when you fall asleep during date night. And for that reason, we created a product, a subset of our product, which allows two people to share one machine.
Yeah, which I have tried.
Yep. So this was named by our athletes the new date night.
Oh, really?
And so people were posting on their own Instagram, the new date night. And so I thought that was so good that I got our designer to come up with a little campaign around the new date night. So you'll see that on our social media. This is something to be really experienced. So quite commonly, we will have legs and hip and glute being used, or arms and legs being used. So arms and legs were something that you were highlighting before.
I need to try that. I need to try that.
All right, we'll loan you some arms. And of course, if it's one person doing the treatment, then you can treat both your arms and your legs at the same time. But just be aware that the arms are going to go like this, and that might be the end of you texting someone. Might become difficult, but you're getting good recovery at the same time. I love the look of your team and what you're doing, and the dynamics of your team, because you've got lots of different folks from lots of different countries.
Different backgrounds, different age group, different ability level. Everyone's welcome.
Very inclusive.
It's always inclusive.
Yeah,
Special needs.
I love that. I love it. So that's really lovely to see. We look forward to meeting you. We look forward to squeezing you, and or as we say, squeeze me, please me. And we'd love you to experience what we do. And you're very welcome to ask any questions. So we're on a journey as well of carrying on learning and carrying on developing. So a lot of the things that we have built into our product have been via feedback from athletes.
Users,
yep. Yeah. And talking with Arthur, who has a very engineering mind, has already come up with some good ideas for us as well. So we look forward to meeting you. Arthur, thanks so much.
Thank you for putting on another awesome recovery clinic.
No worries. And we look forward to meeting you soon. Bye for now.